Greetings to everyone from ManageEngine family, to all the partners, customers, and the users who are joined in for today. And we are going to look into the endpoint management and security solutions. Let me introduce myself. My name is Santosh Narasimhamurthy, and I'm part of ManageEngine Endpoint Management and Security suite of products. I'm a technical evangelist for the products, and I'm also a lead for training and certification. I take care of all the products under endpoint management and security. So under endpoint management and security, we have two different portfolios that we have. We have different line of products for management and for security. Now we have Desktop Central, which is the suite, which is a suite and which has all the features inside the Desktop Central. We have management as well as security suite of products inside Desktop Central. So that's a complete suite. And you also have Mobile Device Manager Plus. That's completely management and security for mobile devices. You have Desktop Central for MSPs, OS Deployer as a separate product, Remote Access Tool, which is an exclusive remote access for your endpoints. And we also have under security, we have different line of products that would suit the customer's need or your needs. Based on your requirement and the budget, you can select the type of product that you need. And if you need it as a suite, you can always go for the Desktop Central. So Vulnerability Manager Plus, that deals with completely checking the vulnerability and patching process altogether. And Patch Manager Plus, if you say I do not want vulnerability, I just need the patching process alone, you can go with Patch Manager Plus, which has on-demand as well as on-prem versions. You have Browser Security Plus, which we will be talking about today. So today is all about unified endpoint security, as the word says. So we're going to look into all the security line of features that's there with the endpoint management and security, which is essentially comes as an add-on into Desktop Central, and it's available as separate products as well. So you have Device Control Plus, Patch Connect Plus, and Application Control Plus. So today we'll be looking at Vulnerability Manager Plus, Browser Security, Device Control, and Application Control, which is essentially part of the Desktop Central's security suite. So once again, welcome to Desktop Central Training, which is tuned for distributed workforce. So let me quickly go through the training schedule that we have today. And we are at week 2, which is unified endpoint security. And we had patch management in the last week. In case if you guys have missed patch management, you can always view the webinar videos that's available. You can go to the link that's shown on the bottom of the screen. Yes, you can register there. And also, if you go and click on know more about patch management, you should still be able to view the videos that was played or the webinar that happened last week. So if you want to register for the upcoming webinar sessions, you can use the same link too. So you have asset management, remote control, and onboarding, which is essentially setting up the product and also configurations, how to use that. That's on week 5. So today, predominantly, we are going to look at the security add-on or the security suite of Desktop Central and the different lineups that I have. So in order to understand the security features that we have, let's look at the agenda that I have. We're going to look at overview of how the product works, just a small overview, which you might have listened to in the other webinars as well, a quite simple overview of what the product is all about. And then we'll directly go into see how you can manage, or are we really equipped to manage a distributed workforce at this juncture. So we are going to try to answer the questions with the top 5 critical security controls from CIS. So CIS has given some top 5, or they have given a lot of guidelines, benchmarks for the endpoint management. But we are going to look at the top 5 security controls that's required or essential for endpoint management and try to see how Desktop Central can help you out in achieving those security controls. In achieving these 5 security controls, we're going to talk about the endpoints lockdown, how to lock the endpoints down, and what's the behavior behind that. and how to respond to known vulnerabilities. Essentially, that's part of patching process. So we are just going to talk about that and then go into the application control, right? How to restrict the endpoints from installing the non-business applications. How do I put a control like a blacklist or even whitelisting, things like that? How do I do that control? We're going to discuss that as well. And browsers being a very important role in our today's organization, because a lot of our applications are going on cloud. So browser security is important. So we look at how to secure our browsers and BitLocker management that comes along with our security suite of products. So you can also look at how you can manage the BitLocker that comes as an encryption at the endpoint level, and data leak prevention by device control. Plus, we are going to look at one aspect of that, and we are going to look at the architecture as well. As time goes on, we will look at few questions at the end of the session. So in case if you have any questions even during this session, you can please feel free to post your questions on the questions panel. I do have an expert with me who will be answering you real time on the chat. And even otherwise, please stay till the end of the session. We will have I will be able to answer your questions as well. Right. What is Desktop Central? That's the first question. Just a quick overview of what Desktop Central is all about for all the evaluators that are there today. So Desktop Central is, as Forrester, a famous research analyst, the market analyst that says a unified endpoint management is a product that provides a centralized policy engine for managing and securing employee laptops, mobile devices from a single console. So that's a definition that's given by Forrester towards unified endpoint management, and that exactly fits Desktop Central. What Desktop Central can essentially do is manage all your endpoints from a centralized console and provide different policies towards security and towards management. And our Desktop Central Unified Endpoint Management Edition, what is all about that? So we have traditional client management that you perform point products, things like making changes to the registries or patching, or even creating some asset reports, things like that. Client management tool. Along with that, you have mobile device management, where you get these modern devices or mobile phones. Mobility management is there. Moving towards that, modern management of Windows 10, Mac OS, and OS deployment. All this together is what the unified endpoint management is all about. When I say traditional management, we go with patch management. In the modern way, it's a controlled OS update. And even though on the patch management level, we still stick to legacy type of patching. And probably when I go towards application management, the thing have differently changed towards modern management, where we are going to use a common store, common ID for downloading the apps and distributing it from the central repositories. And you have profile distribution, asset management, remote control, and you have geo-tracking and geofencing towards the modern management. So this is the all unified endpoint management. If I have Desktop Central with the Unified Management Edition licensing, what do I get? You get all these together, traditional and modern management. So what are the functionalities that I have at a very, very high level? You get software deployment. You can deploy applications from central console to all your endpoints, and you have asset management, patching process. You can do both operating system patches and third-party updates as well, where you can automate the patch deployment by testing those patches in your environment and then approving it for all other endpoints in your location. You can decline patches as well. Mobile device management is also there. Modern management, we spoke about it. You have browser security plus, which is again, browser security is part of this unified endpoint management, vulnerability control and device control, remote access, and OS deployer. So this is a short view of what are the supported operating systems and the different functionalities that we have towards the endpoint management. So we're talking about the supported operating systems. You had different operating systems that we support: Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems as well. So you can go through this list and see pretty much all Windows shop. If you're a Windows shop, and then if you want to manage all Windows OS, we pretty much cover everything. um, Mac as well, even Big Sur is supported. That's not part of the table here, but even Big Sur is also supported. Catalina and Big Sur is also supported there in Mac and Linux OS versions as well. In case if you have specific operating systems that's not part of this list, but if you'd like to know whether they are supported or to be supported, just feel free to contact the email address that's bottom of the screen, desktopcentral-support at manageengine.com. We will get in touch with you and give you answers for it, or you can leave a question on the chat. My expert will be able to answer your queries on that front. And Desktop Central has won a lot of awards too, and probably to name a few, the last consecutive years, 2018 and 2019, we won consecutively for the Gartner Peer Insight Award, and we were part of the Gartner's Magic Quadrant at Unified Endpoint Management tools. Now, moving further, let's go into the products. Let's see how to manage it. Now, in order to understand this better, I'm going to assume something. Just John and his IT team is responsible for managing a distributed workforce. I assume myself as John, and I have an IT team who is actually responsible in managing this distributed workforce, which is along different countries and probably different locations. Let's put it like that. And imagine a setup like this where you have London, Dallas, Bogota, Chennai, and a Sydney locations with different users. Some of the users are connecting through internet. You have roaming users. You have users that are coming in from the office and things like that. Especially in this COVID-19 situation that has completely turned the way we look at security and the way we look at endpoint management. We understand there could be three types of users. From our interactions with our customers, we see there are potentially three types of users. One is a regular user with a VPN who you always had. You had a policy to govern them. That's a regular VPN guy, and you always had what to deploy, how to manage patches, and things like that. And during this COVID-19, now you were forced to give VPN connections for the users where VPN connections from which they are going to get connected to your internal network. Now that's a matter of security. You have placed in programs strategically to govern them. And also the third type of users, where a lot of companies who use cloud-based, on-demand based products, they do not have a VPN. All their applications are on cloud, so there is no problem in there is no need for getting it connected to the central corporate office. So we also have those type of users, and yes, we need to govern these users as well, and with modern concepts that's coming in like zero trust and things like that. So we essentially have these three type of users that we identified, and that were there during the COVID-19 situations, lockdown, and also it's going to come up in future as well. So that's why we call it as distributed workforce. There could be people at the location, those who are back to office. There could be people still on the field who would like to manage. And to give you a better idea, we have a link that's shown on the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to know how to set your desktop central up for this remote work, we've named it as remote work due to this COVID situation, but that will have details about how you can change the existing desktop central or modify things to manage manage remote users. And also, what are the modifications? If I have a remote office, what should I do? If I have a distribution server, what I should do? What's a secure gateway? All those answers are there on the link that's shown on the bottom of the screen. Please make sure you go ahead and visit that. All right, I believe I am audible now. So, all right. So from where I left off, uh, we essentially had three types of users that we were dealing with, and with Desktop Central, if you'd like to know how you can manage these users with Desktop Central. You can go to the link that's shown on the bottom of the screen that will give you more details about it, right? So, in order to generalize the challenges that we faced with this COVID-19 situation, uh, there were troubles in enable management for a distributed workforce. Things like internet bandwidth was a very big issue. Providing a VPN access, or you must push all your application to edge. If you have an on-prem application, you should put to for an edge access, or completely move to cloud and things like that. And things like BIOD devices. We relied on things like laptops from the user sites, mobile devices from the users. So we were forced to use the user devices and bring your own device and also bring your own internet. You rely on the internet source that the user has in order to manage them, and that also questions the security. So we have to tighten it at the endpoint level. So that's why you go into securing. You, you go into securing those endpoints from the distributed workforce front. So there will be endpoints lockdown, vulnerability or patching process, data leak preventions, browser security, encryptions. So are we equipped to manage these distributed workforce? That's a question. So let's get into the product. So the top five CIS control. Now CIS control, as I mentioned, has a lot of different benchmarks that's been set for the endpoints, for the browsers, and for different OS hardening at the network hardening as well. So the top five would be inventory of authorized and unauthorized devices. That's number one. Number two would be inventory of authorized and unauthorized applications that you have at the endpoint level, and secure configurations for hardware and software. What they essentially mean is how you go ahead and secure your endpoints with a plan or a configurations that you have, that what you deploy for these endpoints. That's essentially what they're trying to say. And you have continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation, not just assessment and remediation process as well. And then controlled use of administrative privileges. So how do I bring down the dependency of administrative privileges for the users? How do I go ahead and reduce those administrative, the requirement for user to be administrators, I'll put it like that. And also the other way, a requirement of IT personnel to come in and deploy applications or to make changes with admin privileges. So how do I control those things? See, these are the top five ones. Based on these CIS controls or these CIS methodologies, we have defined our product in that zone. Allowed application, patching process, managing the encryptions, managing firewalls, managing antiviruses, or let me put it as the status reports of the antiviruses, browser security. So at the endpoint level, how do I lock down the endpoints? If I have all these parameters in place, endpoint privileged access management to control the use of administrative privileges, data leak prevention, NAC, network access control, to make sure you have proper configurations or policies before you get connected to the home network. So if you have these on the perimeter level or at the endpoint level, if you're able to secure the endpoint, then you go for a complete lockdown. Good job for yourself. So let's look at the first one I'm going to go towards is the vulnerability management, or how do I respond to known vulnerabilities and the unknown vulnerabilities. Let me get into directly into the product. So this is Desktop Central product. As you guys know, this is a full suite product that I have. If you do not have several of the tabs that you see here, things like application control or threats and patches for the vulnerability management, BitLocker management. If you don't see these options, probably it's because of the licensing or the version that you are on in. So please make sure you can't get in touch with our support, or probably the person who is on our chat answering the questions. You can get in touch with us. We'll let you know how to get these enabled for you. And also, you must know that with the Desktop Central, the vulnerability management, the application control, browser security, device control, and BitLocker management comes as a security add-on or security suite. So if you need security suite to be enabled on your existing desktop central, just get in touch with us. We'll tell you how it is licensed and how to get that enabled. So this is desktop central with all the features, unified endpoint management with security add-on that's enabled. So responding to the known vulnerabilities. So with Desktop Central, as you can see, it runs a scan at all the endpoints. So along with your regular patch management, where you go ahead and configure the scan, right? You go ahead and set it up to scan every day, and it runs a scan at a certain time for knowing the patching. Similarly, it will also run a scan for the vulnerability assessment, and it runs all the through all the endpoints every day once and updates the details on the vulnerability here. The how many missions you have, what are the total number of vulnerabilities. Let's take, for example, I'm going to click on this total vulnerabilities, that's 279. So it gives me a different set lists of vulnerabilities that's identified at the system level. Now note that we have taken some of the critical and important categories, and we have identified the vulnerabilities for the endpoints. Are there other group of vulnerabilities that's available? Yes, there could be other topics as well, but we have taken it, collated it from different security guidelines, and we have taken a list of most important critical vulnerabilities that should be assessed. Where did we get this? We combined it with CIS control, STIG compliance, and also PCI as well, some of the guidelines. So we go ahead and compile these and took the critical ones, level 1, level 2 securities, and those are the ones that we're going to scan and assess your endpoints. Now, this is the report of that lists the available vulnerabilities at your endpoints. Let's take a look at this report. Now, say for example, I want to know how many vulnerabilities have a patch available. So it gives you both the data: vulnerabilities that has patch available, the vulnerabilities that does not have a patch available. So you get both the data. If in case it does not have a patch that's available, let's take a look. It will give you manual resolution. Let's go for this. Now this one does not have a patch available. So that vulnerability, how do I go ahead and fix it? It gives you a manual resolution link. So you can click on that. It takes you to the vendor page, or it tells you how the vendor is telling you to fix. It's not about patching. This one exactly talks about upgrading the entire and upgrading your entire application. That's this vulnerability is all about, and also talks about different other things, why it is assessed as vulnerability and what you can do. If you think this is the version that I have to stick to, then you can see other external links and see how you can secure your endpoints, even though when you have a vulnerable version that's running on the endpoint level. So those informations will be available on this report that gives you references to the external links and also the manual resolution that's given by the vendor themselves. So that's the first one. So that gives you patch availability. If a patch is available, you just go ahead and directly patch those missions. You can select those vulnerabilities and say install patch. It goes into a regular patch management module. I think if you have missed the patch management that happened last week, which they have comprehensively covered about how you can patch an endpoint, how you can automate the patching process, that we have covered it on that module. So you can go ahead and look at it. But from this place, if I want to install a patch, I can just simply go ahead and select those machines and then click on install. Then it will go ahead and deploy those patches for those endpoints. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the exploit status. If a vulnerability is there, something like a 0-day, right? If the vulnerability is available, or exploit status is available or not, right? It's going to show you those details. If an exploit is available and if it's a vulnerable and if you have a patch ready, you just have to patch those missions right away, because that's one of the reasons why it happened on 2017 for this WannaCry, right? That's exactly what happened. You had an exploit status, you had a patch ready, but nobody cared to apply those patch. That's when these endpoints fell as a prey to those to those hackers. So that's where we have to be careful. And that's number 2. And based on severity, what are the critical vulnerabilities that I have to do? CVS scores, right? What is the score for the vulnerability that I have? Of course, all these are tens for the demo purpose. We have to make sure these things are patched, right? And the second category that comes in will be a 0 day, right? And whether any 0 day vulnerabilities are there at your endpoint level. So if you'd like to fix it, it's just a click away. You click on fix it from here. It will go ahead and apply the fix for this vulnerability, as this is a 0 day vulnerability. And you can filter it based on different vulnerabilities that we have classified as 0 day, and we should be able to get those in place. The third category is system misconfigurations. Now, these are vulnerabilities that arise out of the configurations that you have at the endpoint level. Meaning there could be, for example, TLS version. Which version of TLS have you enabled, right? You can go ahead and see, say, for example, if TLS version 1.1 was used, and then you go ahead and deploy a configuration to fix them out. Administrative shares, if they are enabled. So all these are categorized, right? Different at Chrome level or OS hardening level, password policies at firewall level. Is it using legacy protocols, legacy applications? How about the status of the BitLocker encryptions, end of life applications? If you are going to use end of life applications, that's a vulnerability, and we just can go ahead and categorize them and see them as well. So this is system misconfigurations. Probably it's just a simple fix away. And for those fixes that are available, we have deploy secure configuration available. You can click on that, and that will deploy to those. Will it deploy to all the machines? Yes, you can see what are the list of affected machines under that, and it will tell you what are the machines that's there. If you want to deploy it to both of them, you can deploy it from here. So that's also available. Deploy configuration, you can choose and deploy it. And the third one would be high risk software. Again, this could be because it's end of life, or it uses a specific vulnerable protocol, things like peer-to-peer protocol or remote desktop sharing. Remote desktop sharing been quite famous, I should say. The different, I should say, the Bluekeep vulnerability that came in used remote desktop sharing. The recent vulnerabilities were also due to the remote desktop sharing. So that's one of the things that we have to see. Which are the applications that are actually having access to these remote desktop sharing ports? And then web server misconfigurations. So if you're running a web server and if you'd like to audit it and see the security under different categories, things like sysjacking or denial of services, or whether session hijacking is there, cross scripting, based on different categories, we are going to run a vulnerability scan, and you can see the report here. Right? If you want a resolution, you can click on the view resolution. It's going to give, again, what you need to fix it on your web servers in order to safeguard or remove this vulnerability from the existing system. So that's web server misconfiguration. And lastly, it's about port audit. Now, this is more of an audit rather than a vulnerability. It audits the different ports that's part of your endpoint and who's using it. So that also is needed, right? If I want to know, for example, port number 808, if it was used illegally, or if it's some other service is using those ports, I will have to go ahead and 515, so 443, all these ports, if somebody is using illegally to get into the system, so you will get an audit of what ports being used and who's the service that's running at the endpoint level. It's more of an audit, and you can take a call whether to shut those services down or not. So it's more about auditing. So these are the 6 different main topics under which we list those vulnerabilities. And there are 2 things. One is you can go ahead and patch. If a patch is available, you can go ahead and immediately go for automated remediation process, because the patch management will kick in and it will go through the regular automatic patch and it will remediate the vulnerabilities or the issues. Or I can go with the manual remediation as well. You can deploy configurations or make changes at the endpoint level. Both are possible from the Vulnerability Manager Plus standpoint. The second one that wanted to see is the application control. Now, if you have any questions related to Vulnerability Manager Plus, please feel free to leave your questions on the chat. And even after I complete the sessions, I would also try to answer your questions as well. Now, I understood that we had an audio gap of 10 seconds in between. My sincere apologies for that. Hope that network interruptions won't happen again. Now, let's go ahead and see the application control, right? How do I restrict non-business applications, right? We have a security suite that which is called application control, app control, app CTRL. And this takes care of your blacklisting and whitelisting at your endpoint level. Now, essentially, how does this work? Let's go into the product. It's very simple. All the security products, be it device control that we have, be it application control, be it browser security, all these operate in a very, very simple standpoint, meaning you create a policy, you define which group needs this policy, and you just apply the policy. That's how simple it is. So the first thing is I create a policy, right? So I go inside policy deployment on the left side panel, 1, 2, and 3. Third one, policy deployment. I go here and this is to associate the groups. I already have one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit that, modify. So first, you should go ahead and create the groups, right? Let's go ahead and create a group, whitelist or blacklist, you depending on which you want to create. So I already created a whitelist, that's why I came back. So let's create a blacklist, right? Which are the applications that has to be blacklist, that should never be installed or never be allowed to run on endpoint level. So it could be a whitelist or blacklist. It could be based on product name, or it could be based on a complete vendor. You can say allow all these vendors, and or based allow these products, or you could say based on the executables, verified executables that you have, or it could be based on file hash value as well, or it could be based on the folder path, right? And you can go ahead and select those and create an application group. It could be a whitelist, or it could be a blacklist as well. In the whitelist, I have added Adobe Service, Shockwave, and a player and a Delmo 0.6. So all these have been added to the group. Now, if I go into the policy deployment, let me now show you. So I created a policy at the application group, whitelist or blacklist. I created it. Now I'm going to associate that. I'm going to associate that with the groups that I have. Now, if you're not familiar with Desktop Central, just to make you understand, you can create custom groups. Remember the custom groups that we have in Desktop Central. That's where you create different mission groups. So it could be a static group, static unique, or dynamic groups that you can create. It's just a matter of drag and drop, or simply pushing the arrow keys, you can create groups. So you can create it from the list or from a tree that's part of your domain, or it could be based on a CSV. Just import a CSV and put every mission to a static group, and then you can select that group from this drop down, right? So once you create a list, whitelist or blacklist, which is essentially the policy, and then you create a group of computers. If you already have a group that's been created on the custom groups, you can use the same groups, or otherwise you can just create a custom groups for these. Once I create it, I can say whether I want the whitelist policy or the blacklist policy, whichever that you have created. Consider that I go with the whitelist policy, right? Leave the privileged application list. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. If you scroll down, there are two types of mode that's available. One is called the audit mode. The other one is called a strict mode, right? The audit mode is, if I choose audit mode, what happens? Now, if even though I have whitelisted some of the applications, and there are other applications that can be run, so the audit mode will allow all the applications to run. Apart from the whitelisted application, I will allow other applications to run. However, I'll create a report and give it to you saying these are the gray list. Hey, you have said, for example, Adobe suite of products should be allowed as whitelist. So I have allowed Adobe. But apart from that, there is a big list of products that's running on the systems. We call it as a gray list. So if I go to the dashboard, it's going to tell about the gray list that are there. So it has seen there are other applications that's running. 9 different other applications, Photoshops or probably the Opera browsers. So you can see, apart from the whitelisted that I have given, this specific machine is running the other applications as well. So I can either say move these to blacklist, which means I will not allow these applications on the end at the endpoint level, or say it's a genuine application, just put them to the whitelist. So you can go ahead and do it. Going back to the policy deployment again, so that's audit mode, right? And if I go with the strict mode, so if I go with strict mode, as the word suggests, apart from the whitelisted application, I will not allow any other application to run. So that's strict mode. It will go ahead and freeze with the apart from the ones that are whitelisted. It will allow none of the other applications or the exes to run at the endpoint level, which is great, right? So that's strict mode. Now coming back to the associate privileged application list. Now remember this. The CIS, one of the CIS controls that says privileged controlled use of administrative privilege. Now, this may not directly into the specific CIS, but then it has on the background, it works similar to that. Let me get you to the product. What this basically does is, if you require administrative privileges to run specific applications, for example, the user need admin privilege for my in-house application to run, it requires elevated privileges, and that is why I am providing administrative privilege to this user. Now you no longer has to do that. You don't have to provide administrative rights to all the user. You can strip down that administrative level for your users. Rather, you can tell desktop central application to say, hey, in your privileged list, go ahead and add my in-house applications or the other applications that requires elevated privileges. Now by this, what happens is, even if the user does not have an administrative privilege, when the endpoint tries to run these applications, our agent will elevate the privileges. It will impersonate these applications to go ahead and run on elevated privileges, whose account, system user account, and thereby giving it an administrative privilege just for that session alone. Until the application runs on the OS, I will give administrative privilege for that application, and once the session is over, I'm going to step down the privileges. By this, you don't have to give administrative privilege to your user. I repeat, you don't have to give it them to user. Rather, you can select the application that requires administrative privileges, so that the desktop central agent that runs there, whenever they try to access these applications, we will elevate the privileges for those applications so that they will run without any issues. So that's one of the way how you can control the administrative privileges that's been given to the users, right? So essentially, we have three things here. What we have learned is, you can group the missions and create separate policies, whitelist or blacklist, two different policies. Apply those policies to those missions, and then if specific application requires elevated privileges, I can go ahead and add those to the list. So that's saying, hey, this application requires elevated privileges, and then you either put it on audit mode or you put them on strict mode. If it's an audit mode, I will allow everything apart from the ones that are whitelisted. I'm going to take a report and report it to you. If I'm on a strict mode, which means completely blocked, all the applications apart from the whitelisted will be blocked. That's how application control works. So let's move on this front. The next one that we are going to see is going to be the browser security, right? So how do I secure your browsers? How do I secure your browsers? As you know, browsers have become a tremendous tool, or a tool without which some of our work is meaningless, right? All of our applications are on cloud, or somewhere or the other, we require a browser in order to interact with the data centers and things like that. So it's also important to, and trust me, most of the attacks that's happening on the endpoint level, even during this COVID situations, I did not put the data on the presentation, but still they say it increased more than 148% during this COVID-19 times. That's how much attacks have been increased. So most of these attacks are browser based. It takes the ignorance of the users, and also when they click a link and things like that. So we can secure it by Browser Security Plus. Let me go into it has two editions. One is a standalone edition, and it also comes into the desktop central as well. So what are the different browsers that we support? We support Chrome, Internet Explorer, Edge, and Firefox for now, but we plan to add more browsers to this list as well. Why do I need browser security? Protect my network from security breaches, as I explained, and also to protect sensitive enterprise data, uh, prevent it from going through the web. So to understand this better, what type of security are we talking about? I'm going to take again from the same CIS benchmarks. For CIS benchmarks, they you can go to the website of CIS and you can search for benchmarks for Edge, benchmarks for Chrome, benchmarks for Firefox browser, different browsers that you have. So they would suggest the organizations to go ahead and at least go for a level 1 or level 2 securities. If you go there, they have level 1, level 2, level 3 and 4 as well. They have different security levels in which they have defined what are the settings that needs to be disabled, what can be enabled, what need to be used very cautiously, and things like that. Out of those CIS benchmarks, I have taken a couple of them just to give you an example at the Edge level, Chrome level, and probably at a Firefox level, to see if that's possible, and also to show you around what are the different areas that I can actually do it from browser security. The first one is to configure, how to enable or disable add-ons. So let me take you directly to the product. Browser management. So again, like I mentioned, or how I explained to you, you can create groups, computer groups or different groups, and you can create a policy and match these computer groups to the policy. So I create a group of computers, I create a policy for them, I just match these policies to those groups. That's what I do. So the first thing is about creating policies. So like the first one that came in was enable or disable add-on, or putting it as add-on management, right? So whether you want to, let's take Chrome, you have for Explorer, Firefox, and Edge on Chromium as well. So whether what you want to do for the end user, whether you want to allow them to install the extensions or the add-ons, at different browsers have different terminologies. So whether you want to allow them to install it or not, you can choose it. Or if you say allow them to install but blacklist some of them, probably YouTube or probably a few other things. So if you can go ahead and create a blacklist. These extensions should not be installed for at any cost. Or you can say just go ahead and block completely, right? And then say don't allow the user to install any plugins, but I can create a whitelist. If you think there are genuine plugins that can be used, go ahead and add it to the whitelist here. What about the existing add-ons or the extensions, whether you want to disable them or let the user keep it? So what about the native message permission, whether you want to allow or blocked? So you can go ahead and do those changes. So comprehensive add-on management is possible from the browser security. You do have a very big list of different security parameters that I can control. So let me take you to the next one that says at the CIS benchmark for it, that says set Java permission to enable, or you can just say enabled as disable Java. So now how they believe Java applications could contain malicious code, and most of the times if they try to run a Java applications, of course not genuinely, if they are trying to run malicious codes out of Java, then it could affect. So if you think they don't need any Java based applications that's running at the endpoint level, especially if you're completely cloud based and things like that, so you can very well manage these Java permission. And not only that, let's go into the policy that you have, browser security. You have a comprehensive Java manager for that. Now, with which this policy, so where does these policy apply to? Does it apply to a specific websites or website groups? I can create these website groups as well. So leave this here. Let's go to browsers, and then I go to manage. So I create different website groups. Say for example, social networking group, or you can create your own office or the intranet portals, or the whitelisted URLs that you have, right? These things can be created into website groups, and you can map those policies to that. So I go here, Java Manager, and I put the policy name, and it could apply to a specific website, or it could be applied to a specific groups as well. So then you say whether to block the Java. So if they try to run, what message should be deployed? Or you can say run those Javas, but then it should use a specific version of Java, anything that's above 6 update 28, something like that, either exact or anything above it. So there are two implications here. One is that I can block the websites from using Java. Number two, if your in-house applications requires a specific version of Java, I can go ahead and assign those too, so that you don't have to, every time when a user says my page is having issues, the application is not loading, you can then you don't have to step in every time. So once you deploy this, it will exactly make sure these, whenever they hit those URLs, we will make sure that it uses a specific version of Java. So that's the two implications that you have with Java Manager. And apart from that, you have a lot of other things as well. Let's go ahead and see one by one, as time permits for us. So download filter. So if you like to completely block all the downloads for all the URLs, I can go ahead and create block all downloads. I will be able to do it, and that's download filter. And then threat preventions. Let's look at some of the policies that you have in threat preventions. So at threat preventions, if whether you can set whether a website can override certificate errors, or validation of certificate is essential there, file downloads, block the websites that has excessive ads, or third party, if they have third party inject scores on their websites, go ahead and block it. So threat prevention policies can be created from here, different threat prevention policies. Then data leak prevention. So when it comes to data leak preventions, things like uploading and downloading, printing the web pages, clearing the cache, remembering the passwords, suggestions, and prompt for download locations, browsing history. And one of the important things is this background processing, right? So what is background processing is the Chrome or Chromium based browsers have this ability to run the application even when the browser is closed. Say, for example, you go into a website and you launch a specific process into the system. Let's assume that it launches a specific process into the system. Now, I close the browser. After you browsing through a URL, I close the browser. Even after you close that, this service or this application that was launched will still be running on the background. And now Chrome can allow it. Chromium-based browsers can allow it. Now, that's a problem. If there is a malicious code that was running, or if there was a harmful ransomware that's been let out through the URLs. Now, if I have this enabled, that's going to let this application run even after you closing the browser. So it's better to disable it. Trust me, this is one of the critical parameters that's been told by CAS benchmarks. You can see that on their website, blocking background processing. Browser customizations as well. You can create different customizations for the browsers. Things like web Bluetooth guard, it's important. This gives access to all your Bluetooth devices that's around your computer. So URLs that can use your Bluetooth can take information from the other sources as well. Geolocations, plugins, content restrictions for specific URLs alone. If you want to do that, I can. Security restrictions as well. Proxies, homepage setup and startup, I can define it. Security restrictions for specific URLs, right? How do you want to add those? So these are policies, browser customization that I can do. Apart from that, you have browser router. Now, I can say which application should run on which browser, right? If you have in-house application that requires IE browser or a Chrome browser, I can go ahead and route them. Whether it could be all intranet sites or specific group of websites or specific sites alone. If you would like to route them to the correct browser, I can use this router policy. Lockdown is like putting them on a kiosk mode, right? Let's see that. So if I go into the browser lockdown policy, now what this basically means is I can apply the policy to specific website groups, right? Say for example, social networking. So apart from the ones that's being listed here, right? Apart from the group of policies that you have selected, let's go back and see. Apart from this, I have selected social group networking, but in your case, you would go ahead and select the URLs that's whitelisted or is applicable for your corporates. So you go ahead and select those URLs. Apart from those URLs, it will not allow the browsers to go for other locations. So that's why you have kiosk mode, right? I mean, not essentially a kiosk mode, but we call it as a browser lockdown. And it also has web filters. So if you'd like to have web-based filters blocking malicious sites, or if it could be, if it's going to be a domain-based filters block or allow something like whitelisting, or if you say my employees can use Facebook after the shift hours, so you can even schedule time here, right? You can go ahead and schedule those, saying for example, allow these website after specific hours. You can schedule those here using the web filters and web isolation, data in persistent sessions, right? So something like you create a sandbox where you open a browser, all whatever they browse will go into the sandbox. Once they close the session, all the data is gone, something like that, right? So that's web isolate, data in persistent sessions. So this is browser security, add-on management, download filter, threat prevention, data leak prevention, browser router and lockdown, Java manager, etc. So let's get back into our other security line of products. The next one would be the device control plus. Right, device control plus is let me take you directly to the product. It is it's an expanded version of USB device management. For people who were using Desktop Central would identify this. So we had a configuration called USB device management, where it's essentially it blocks the USBs or allows USBs access. Now this device control gives you a even more comprehensive approach towards that. Say for example, again the same thing. You create a group, you create a policy, associate the policy to the group. That's where we come in. So I go ahead and create a policy. I can say allow the removable device. Now here, when I'm going to allow a removable device, I can do a lot of things here. Allow certain files to be copied in, certain extensions to be copied in, or based on the size, file size, as you can see. File size of maximum 500 KB can be copied in. Things like that can be altered. File shadowing and file shadowing and file tracing, or file tracing, right? So what it essentially means is if they copy something into their USBs, it will also take a copy and store it for you. So whatever changes they make or whatever files they copied out, you will also know what files they copied. So that's called file shadowing. So you just give a share path in which you want to store these files. Whenever they try to copy the files, we'll also take a copy and keep it for you, right? And the file tracing, if you don't want to copy the files for security or privacy concerns, no problem. We have file tracing as well. So if you want to enable file tracing, it will only trace what files were copied, who copied it. Those information would be stored, right? And I can put a list of trusted devices as well. So if you want to have a list of trusted devices that's approved by your IT administrator, they can use these trusted devices. Then temporary access, right? What if a guest comes into my organizations? If I want to allow USBs temporarily for my guest, can I do that? Yes, you can either send it as a code, generated code to the user, and say apply this code whenever it's asking for a code to enter the USB, enter the code to access the USB. You can give a code, generate a code, or simply like choosing we say all instances I add it. It could be generation of code, or it could be simply deploying it. I can schedule it fixed hour, 1 hour, allow the user, or on a specific window. I can schedule it. This 1 hour, you will be free to use the USBs. Otherwise, you apply the code and you will get that access. Things like that. So temporary access is also available. Blocking, unblocking, file tracing, file shadowing, temporary access, and give different insights about what's happening here on the USB devices is part of device control. So data leak prevention is partially given by the device control plus product. Now, one other thing on the security suite is NAC, right? Network access control, which is very, very important. So you can create different policies, and this is the workflow. So you go ahead and define a policy, and then it is taken by the server. Then an agent that sits there, you can have an agent that sits there on the machine, will process whether these configurations are there, compliant or not compliant. If it's compliant, don't do anything. If it's non-compliant, block the machine networks, and then until the compliance is met, the machine will not be let into the network. This is how the tool looks. So you can go ahead and create those compliances here. We have different categories there. It could be software, it could be a service, it could be a registry entries. Different things are available. In fact, the link that's shown on the bottom of the screen, you can get this network access control tool. It's a small tool that should be installed along with the desktop central agent. We will take care of it once you apply the policy. So I think you can take you will get the video at the end of the after the presentation, but still, if you'd like to take a screenshot, you can. In this link, you will be able to get more details about how to create, how to download this tool, and how to run this tool, right? Network access control. One last thing with the product would be the BitLocker management, right? If you have a complete security suite, if you're opting for security add-on completely, then you will get BitLocker management. BitLocker management is not available separately. It's available only along with the suite, right? And again, same here, create a policy and then push it onto the devices. You can create encryption. It will also fetch the recovery keys. If you want to update the domain controller, that we can do it. If you'd like to rotate the keys for every 3 months or 30 days or 90 days, you can rotate the keys and then store those recovery keys at the AD as well as here on the report as well. So I go to BitLocker reports. It gives me complete details about how many machines were encrypted, what standards. If I want to retrieve a key, I can do that as well. Put in the identifier, it will tell me what the recovery key is. So complete and comprehensive BitLocker management is also available. Right. So with that, I'm going to conclude my session. However, I'm going to see the different questions that's asked in. So let's go ahead for a Q&A session. Let's look at different questions that been asked from our customers. Right, I'm just going through the questions. So I'm just trying to look. Most of the questions were answered directly, but I'm just doing to see, can we manage edge browsers? Yes, we can. Is App Control available for cloud version of Desktop Central? So the security add-on is available for on-prem at the moment. It's not available for the cloud or on-demand version. So apologies, we would try to get that soon for you, but it's not available for the cloud. The security, this is an on-prem version that I showed you and not available for the cloud, but soon we're trying to release that, right? Do the end user gets a notification when the application is blocked? Yes, they would get a notification. If it's an exe, mostly there are two things that we can do. One is either through this, no notification won't allow them to do it, or we also have place where we can configure that. We call it as prohibit software. We'll be dealing that with asset management, where you can actually create a message for the user if they are using a prohibited application. So that's also part of Desktop Central. Right. So there are questions that's related to what are the dependencies that arise on the application, elevated privileges. Well, yeah, if that specific, so for example, one services starts up and if it requires administrative privileges, the dependencies will also be started up using the elevated privileges as it's triggered by one service after the other. So it's better to put it as from the vendor. So if a service is initiated by a vendor or a product, then which means the other dependencies will also be initiated. So that should also be, I mean, it would also run in the elevated mode. So my version, okay, if you're wondering about the 647 version, so yes, if you would like to try that version, we gladly would like to give it to you. Just get in touch with the support. However, that's been released only for certain builds. Mine is a test build, but if you'd like to try 647, you can. Or otherwise, these features are even available for the builds that's before that on the latest editions. So if you want to enable the endpoint security, right, or let's try to do that. If you don't see any of these modules there, I think if you want to enable it, you see this endpoint security add-on. If you'd like to trial or if you'd like to enable it, you go to admin, you click on endpoint security add-on. That's one of the questions. How do I enable it? You click on that. Mine is already enabled, so you see all those details. For you, it will ask you to enable it. So admin endpoint security add-on, right? Upgrade your server to the latest one, and then you can go ahead and enable it. All right, I have a couple of questions as well. Well, what if we? That's a good question. The question is, what if we use security baseline GPOs? And do you recommend using DC security features along with these GPOs? Yes, because I mean we do not relate or use the GPO services to make changes at the endpoint level. So if you have GPOs that's there, no problem. You can still use Desktop Central. It's not going to interfere with GPOs. However, remember GPO is from a domain controller. It's an administrator. So if you have a conflicting things, something like you block a specific device from using a GPO, and if you want to enable it through Desktop Central, that's not going to happen. GPO always takes precedence because that's a domain administrator, right? What is the limitation on the number of machines or computers blocked by BitLocker module? You absolutely have no restrictions on that as long as you have uh, uh, the BitLocker along with the security add-on. Yes, you can manage all those missions. So security add-on is it comes as security, as it says, it's an add-on. So if you'd like to enable and trial it out, yes, it's separately licensed along with the unified endpoint management. It's a whole suite, or you can always go with the separate, standalone products as well, right? That's Mac encryption. I see the person left. Okay. So the Mac encryption. So if you're file vault, yes, we do manage it using the MDM portion of it. So file vault encryption management is available. So if you're looking to do that, I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. Yes, we have that feature, right? File vault encryptions. We can manage it through mobile device management. So if I already have an MDM deployed, is it easy to move Desktop Central? So yes, can be migrated. That's an answer given to them for yes, device can be migrated, but not the data. Um, yeah, so if you're looking to migrate, you use MDM inside Desktop Central. We'll help you migrate the devices, but if you think about the data, I'm afraid altogether two different products. The data will not be able to import. Of course, if it's a custom fields like using the asset informations, or you can always export and import back. but the other details about the previous history, those things will not be migrated. So on the Mac OS, there don't does there need to be a separate administrative account present for Desktop Central to function? It does not. Let me take you to the product to show that to you. That's the best way. So I go to Agent. So I get into the agent settings, Mac agent settings. This is where you decide what if your Mac requires credentials, that specific credentials or special credentials apart from the ones that you already have. You can add those credentials. So for the Mac machines alone, we will use these credentials, right? So that's there. Is it possible to remotely lock a BitLock managed machine? I believe not. So the policy is set to say, for let's create a policy and show you what are the things that we can do. So I can enable the encryption. I can say different parameters to it. So this is the policy that I can do. Right? I cannot lock the machine up, asking them to go for forcing them to ask for a recovery key. That is not possible, unfortunately. Okay. Happy to see a lot of questions coming in, and my colleague is also doing a fantastic job of answering them. I'm trying to answer the rest of them. But I think that with that, most of the questions were answered as well. And thank you very much. If you'd like to see a personalized demo from our side, please feel free to drop your email or contact with our chat team, or you can always get in touch with us as well. We'll make sure you get a demonstration of the products that's shown. Please spread a word if you like the training, and also please do rate us on a scale of 5. While you exit the meeting, you will be asked to rate us. Please feel free to rate us. It gives us more motivation. Next training schedule is about software deployment or software management, which happens next week, 7 days from now. We have an expert who is going to talk about how to deploy the applications using Desktop Central. So that's software management. Until then, thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful week ahead. Bye bye.